Thank you for having me. We're excited to be here. We love Greenville. We're in 20 cities doing our analysis in the Southeast. The very good fortune of being able to speak in most of those cities. I just was in Augusta and Savannah and Columbia and ending in Greenville, but we speak in all those cities. I love them all, love all my customers, of course. But none of these are perfect towns, but in our opinion, just so you know, and I tell other cities this, Greenville's got it figured out better than any of those up there. So you're not perfect either, I'm sure, but you're doing a great job. We love this town. If I can find a way to get up here and leave Atlanta, I will. We do the biggest housing market update in Atlanta for the last 12 years. It's so big we have to hold it in SunTrust Park. Go Braves. Kidding, it's a little bitty conference room right here. We have about 500 people. And my co-speaker at that event is Dr. Rajiv Dewan, is somebody who has to be there who's semi-smart, and it's him. He's the Georgia State Economic Forecasting Center Director. He keeps me in line. But we themed this one Economics 101. We're going to talk about a little bit what's going on in housing and the reason for that and the reason for need to change. But if you've been reading the national news lately, we're all dead in the housing industry. Stick a fork in it, we're done. This is an article from in July. I actually did a rebuttal to this article for our customers. I'll be glad to send it to you. Now the premise is correct. By the way, they like red flashing things, large red flag, U.S. market suggests recession around the election of 2020. Red flashing lights, housing market spell trouble with the economy. And just yesterday, Bank of America downgraded all home builder stocks. Yes, there's something going on. There is. It's called moderation. What's moderation a nice way of saying? Slowing. Economics 101 says sales go down or sales slow for one of two reasons, generally. Lack of demand. And what's the other option? Lack of supply. So I do a 5-question survey before our event in Atlanta, and it's relevant today. And I asked them, sales are moderating not just in Atlanta, but around the country, here in Greenville as well. Is that because demand is dropping? Or is it a lack of supply? And then I gave them another option. Is it lack of supply in certain price points or a natural occurrence in maturing expansion? Actually, my audience got it for the most part right. It's not just a general lack of supply. It's a lack of supply in the price points where people can afford. And there's reason for that. I want to talk about it. Also, it is a natural occurrence in maturing expansion. We're in the 9th year, so-called, of this expansion that economists will tell you. What's the longest expansion this country's ever had? 10. So I'm getting that question a lot too. New homes are moderating. I've got too many slides. Sherry's going to slap me on the wrist. So just let me go through these quickly. All housing markets are moderating. And when I say that, I mean the growth rate is dropping. And they all have the same shape. So here's the number 1 new home market in the country, Houston. Growth is slowing since 2013. Second biggest is Dallas. Growth is slowing since 2013. Atlanta is the 3rd biggest new home market. Dramatic, sharp moderation in Atlanta. So you see this pattern for this 12-month moving average. If you take the top 10, 50% below normal, by the way, from 12 years ago. You guys are only 11% below normal here in Greenville, which is pretty good. If you put that 12-month moving average trend line together for all the top 10 cities, you'll notice that they're very similar. Lots of lines going a lot of directions here. Just keep in mind for this chart, up is good, down is bad. What's this? Ah! That's a Great Recession. What's this? Anybody know? We were privileged to work with Senator Johnny Isakson from the state of Georgia on the second tax credit. He used our data on the Senate floor. That is a tax credit bounce, folks. And then we had a tax credit, post-tax credit drop. So every housing market, new construction showed tremendous growth rates from the bottom in 12 to 14 or 15, and then every one of them has trailed off in the same direction. Why? Well, back here, we were the only game in town. We had cheap lots, all those foreclosed lots the banks took back here. We were building on those at pennies on the dollar, and we had no resale competition because if you didn't have to sell your personal home in 2010 and 11, did you? You were underwater. Now what's happened is we've run out of cheap lots. The cost to develop, talk about that in a minute, And we have massive resale competition because those folks are no longer underwater. Okay, and they're moving. So that's the general trend. Southeast is the same way. I'm going to burn through these. Charlotte, moderating dramatically. Charleston is almost flat now in terms of new construction. Columbia, moderating. Nashville is negative. Nashville, mighty Nashville, the darling of the Southeast for new homes, has been negative in new construction all year. Is that because there's no demand in Nashville? No. It's because we can't supply the right price points anymore. So that's an issue. Greenville, also moderation, but a nice little uptick right here. And you're about 11% off where you were at the peak, so looking pretty good. So just to show you what's going on, we've developed this gap between new construction. And why is new construction important for economies? It creates what? Do you create a job when you sell a resale home? You make a realtor happy. But you don't create jobs. 3 jobs for every new home built is the general thesis on that. But we've lost that. This gap between new and resale has developed, and we can't make that gap back up. Resale is taking over because it's getting harder for us to hit the right price points. So why? Robert Dietz is the national economist for the National Association of Home Builders. He says median lot values have gone up. We ran out of cheap lots. Costs in general are rising because of regulatory burdens in the form of environmental, labor, and zoning rules. He has calculated that that increase to develop is up 30% in the last 5 years. What has your income done in the last 5 years? Is it up 30%? Oops, we ran out of cheap lots starting in 2013 and 14 and got slammed with this. And that's what, now that's 60% in Atlanta. It's up 60% in that same 5-year period. 30% is an average. The result is a disconnect between the prices of existing homes and new homes. And that's part of the problem that we're seeing and causing some of the moderation. So what would happen if you waved a magic wand and every legacy or distressed lot disappeared from each city? Atlanta's in trouble. I just want to show you this. The cost to put a new lot on the ground in Atlanta after you run out of every cheap lot is basically going to be $100,000 with the increased development cost that we've seen. So if you're $100,000 on the lot minimum after you run out of cheap lots, what house price would that be? Any builders in the room? Usually you're going to multiply that times what? 5. Okay, where do most people buy homes in Atlanta? Under 3. So if you run out of every cheap lot in Atlanta, all our builders are going to be relegated to a $500,000 plus house. That's a very thin market. Does that make sense? That's if you keep doing what we've always been doing. And then I think we're going to have to change. How do you get back to these price points is what I want to talk about. There are several ways. That's 88% of total housing demand is going to be below our ability to reach based on these new development costs. If we don't either roll those back, which I don't think will happen, or change the way we build. Greenville, very similar. This is Greenville housing demand. Percentage of buyers by price point. Most of the buyers are where? Just like Atlanta. Every one of my cities looks just like this. Unless you're in Miami or New York, you look like this. People's incomes are generally very similar. So what's it going to cost you to put a new lot on the ground in Augusta? Based on my conversations, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong, when you run out of every cheap lot in Augusta to develop, including all in, develop, land, carry cost, profit, you're pushing 60 grand. Not 100, you're a lot better than 100. But am I right about that? Anybody paying 50 to 60 for lots? More? Well, let's assume you can do it for 60. That makes your house price 300 grand. That puts you right here. And if you come over here, what that means is 85% of all housing demand is below our ability to reach if you do things the way we've always done them and don't change what you do. I'll roll back that. So let's talk about where we are real quick, just to show you how the world works differently. And this is fascinating because every one of my cities has more people employed today than they did back in the peak in '06. And yet we're selling, in some cases, half the number of new homes and less homes overall. But this is a chart that I think you'll find interesting because it's got job loss, going back to the last recession, job gains above the green line. The red line is job loss and job gains. Housing demand is the yellow line that's right over here. So usually economists used to think that housing and jobs went together. You could predict how many houses you're going to need based on the number of jobs you're producing. But the world used to actually work different than that. Remember this recession, 2001, 2, NASDAQ collapse, 9/11? We lost jobs 3 years in a row and just kept on selling houses. Didn't even feel that recession. How do you explain that? Back then, you didn't even have to have a job. You put you in a house. Subprime. 520 credit score, just got out of San Quentin. Here's your house. Okay, then we had the traditional effect of housing and jobs tracking together, and then the world ended, and now you can have all the jobs you want. We've got 9 years in a row of positive job growth, and housing lags. So it's a different world today, made up by, what's making up this? If you're moving to Greenville and you're not buying a house, what are you doing? You're in your parents' basement. And you're renting. So that's the gap. Employment numbers for Greenville based on the government, you're way ahead of where you were. So that's all positive. So why are we selling fewer homes? We're missing a huge group of buyers. So I asked this question in my audience. What demographic group accounted for 60% of all new home sales and all sales, not just new, in the old normal, pre-2003? Anybody know? Age group? That's today. First time. Wow. Specifically 18 to 34-year-olds. Really? Who makes up most of the buyers today? Somebody just said it. Boomers. Because they can. Their 401k crashed to a 101k during the recession. Now it's back to a 501k. And they're out of here. And they're selling homes that are tremendous competition for the new homes. So this is a chart that I think will show you who we're missing, why we're 50% below where we used to be in the country, and if we can ever get back to that. There's the old normal. The old normal was the top tier of buyers in this country were first-time buyers. You remember that. 40% of all buyers used to be first-timers. The second group is first move-up, buying their second home in their lifetime. And you put those two groups together, and that accounts for 60% of all home sales in the old normal. We've been in utter chaos ever since. Now, the first-time buyers are very price sensitive. They came back in when houses got cheap. We had a sale for the tax credit. They were kind of hanging around as long as we could build on cheap lots. And then we ran out of cheap lots, and prices went up too fast, and what happened to first-time home buyers? Boom, can't get them back. Very price sensitive. We're not going to get back to 50,000 in Atlanta, 1.3 million home sales in this country nationally until the red line and the yellow line get back on top. Now, demographically, here's what makes it different. 100 years ago when I bought my house, the average age of a first-time buyer was 25 years old. If you're my age, you know this. It took you a couple of years to get established in a job, not 10 years like it does today. And then you got married, and all your buddies got married because you had to be in their wedding and go buy them stupid presents. And you all started having babies. You bought a home at 25. How often did people move back then? Every 7 years. So I'm 25. I'm 40% of all new home buyers. And I'm also the lowest price. Right? First time home buyers? 7 years later, I've had kids need a better school and a bigger house. I'm 25 to 30%. So who do we call this age group today? Millennials. Darn millennials. What's the age of a first-time buyer today? It ain't 25. Anybody know what the average age is today? 33 and going up. All you could name reasons ad nauseam. Okay, student debt, takes longer to get established in a career, all those things. Mainly, we can't give them what they want, though, which we'll talk about. The challenge is adding inventory in that lower price space. There's 2 ways to do it. Actually, there are 3 ways, but I discount the one way. The one way to do it is to roll back all of these crazy regulations that we've done over the last 5 years. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd like for it to, but I'm telling my builders, you're going to have to learn to live in this environment. Drive till you qualify. That's how you get cheaper. You go further out. Are we doing that? That's one option. Yeah, you're doing that. It's gotten expensive to develop in Greenville. You've run out of cheap lots. The sales in Greenville as a percentage of these 3 counties are going what? Down? And who's getting the benefit? Spartanburg. It's going on in every one of my cities. We're moving further out. Who's moving further out? It ain't millennials. It's family buyers who need a good school district and can't afford to be close in anymore. And to some degree, it's empty nesters who can move out there and retire. It's not the millennials. That's the 60% that we don't tap into anymore in home sales. So are millennials rushing to the ring of death, and I call that the outlying counties, to buy cheap homes on cheap lots? Our industry thought they were going to. They were going to forsake their apartments and rush out to the burbs and buy a house, because that's what they used to do. Are they? Well, my audience said, no. But you know what? We thought they were going to do it in 15. Oops. Then we thought they were surely going to do it in 16. Oops. Then we thought they were going to do it in 17. Really revolutionize the real estate market. And now we think it's going to happen this year. No. It is not going to happen. Why? We can't give them what they want, where they want it, at a price they can afford. This is that simple. Yet. That's a positive. Option 2 is you build smaller, closer in. We're doing that too, to a certain degree. I think we can ramp it up. There's also been a start of a shift to building smaller homes and townhomes. I'm bullish on townhomes. This is Robert Dietz again. And are you doing that in Greenville? Oh yes. Townhomes were here, now they're here. And they're filling in that lower price gap. So this is a logical move from a detached. The next density would be townhome. We'll talk about even more dense stuff. But let me give you an example of how townhomes are bringing the price point down. We'll use Greer High School District. These are detached sales in Greer, new construction, back in 16 when we had cheap lots. Now what we do is we've got a price and a square footage axis here. You with me? This is 2016. Let's fast forward 2 years. Where's the current inventory based on newly developed lots? Way up here. If you go at 2,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, that is a 40% increase in 2 years. Builders don't want to be there. They have to be. Because the cost to develop has gone up that much. Does that make sense? We're going to sell fewer homes at that price point. Because price goes up, demand does what? Don't. So how do we get back into these price points where more people can afford it? Well, we've done it. That's 20% per year, by the way. That's outrageous. We've done it by building townhomes in those price points. This is going on in every city as well. So you're filling in those lower price points with a denser product, and it seems to be working so far. That is not typically this buyer, though. You're tapping into these 2 buyer groups, which, by the way, are the biggest consumer groups in the country. Millennials just took over from the baby boomers, and these 2 people have a lot in common. Let's talk about this table. You're 52, like me. You had 2 kids and you just kicked your last kid out of the house? Every night's a party. Tell me. I like to party more than these do. Give me craft brewery with exposed brick like you got in downtown Greenville. I'm there. And I don't need 3,000 square feet anymore. Some of the most successful communities in Atlanta are in horrible school districts, cool locations, low prices, attacking these 2 buyer groups. And it's very well. So is innovation needed in our industry? Yes. It's time to innovate. Let me just show you what's going on. If you don't innovate, you know this. The retail industry in this country and restaurant industry to some degree is in a free fall and a collapse. Did you know we shut down 9,000 brick and mortar retail locations in this country last year, and it's accelerating? Who's causing this? Millennials. Amazon. My kids get deodorant and toilet paper from Amazon delivered to their house. They don't go to a store. VDR though, this is creating great opportunity to repurpose some of this stuff. It's in great locations, the infrastructure's already there, and usually it's considered a down zone from retail to residential. And we're seeing that happen. And it doesn't have to just be the malls. We're starting to, this is snowballing in Atlanta in the last 6 months. Massive redevelopment plans for North DeKalb Mall. Massive redevelopment plans for Alpharedo's North Buck Mall. Yesterday, this came out. The one in Atlanta. If you're familiar with Atlanta, Buckhead is the be-all, end-all. This is Phipps Plaza. They're going to have to redevelop it. It doesn't work anymore. But you've got smaller situations too. Let me show you a couple of things. We don't like to innovate. We like to hold on to things like this cat. No. Don't take it away from me. I had to put that in there. Partnerships. Old infrastructure, antiquated, out of date, redevelop it. This is an old strip mall that the city of Smyrna partnered with a developer to do. Walkable, all the stuff we're going to talk about, you're going to hear Karen talk about. But there was participation here. There was a partnership there. It would not have worked. It would not have worked. And you're getting the two barbells here. This is a horrible school district in Atlanta, but it's close in, and you're getting the late millennials and the early baby boomers, and they're all loving it, and it's one of the best-selling subdivisions in Atlanta. An old apartment complex, the same city, tore down. It was drug infested. It was only 40% occupied. They relocated those people, put little small homes on there, and a decent price for the area, and it was a partnership as well. So let's talk about even more density, and I'm not a proponent of what I'm about to show you necessarily. I'm just going to show you what necessity being the mode of invention is causing mostly local builders to do in our industry around the Southeast, actually. And I'll just let you be the judge. But here's why. We all thought the apartment industry was going to overbuild. My industry said they're dead because they're going to get tired of paying rent. Those millennials are going to rush out of those apartments and those cool locations, you know, with the craft brewery, the exposed brewery, and go out and buy our homes in the burbs. And they didn't. And then they didn't. And then they didn't. And then they didn't. We got to learn from this. Rental rates are very similar in in-town areas. This is Atlanta. Let me just show you 532 square feet renting for 13 to 14. How big is 500 square feet? Garage. Millennials and others are willing to stay in smaller square footage to live where they want to live because their amenity is their neighborhood. Look at these, and it's very similar. Okay, well, that's only Atlanta. No, it's not. How about Greenville? 592, 1275. 600, 1295. Very similar. Charleston, Columbia even. So we've got to maybe learn from this because maybe we can compete with the for-sale product. Great study here that talks about how much people spend before they actually end up buying a home, the different generations. Gen Z, and I got two of those at home, need to get them out of the house. But by the time Gen Z gets out of your basement and in the real world, which is about 5 years from now, they're projected to spend $1,700 a month for 11 years before they buy. Realtors, mortgage people, what kind of mortgage can you get for $1,700 a month with 10% down at today's rates? I did the math for you. About $360,000. Go get it. Give them what they want, where they want. It ain't going to be 2,000 square feet in the burbs. It's going to be 500 square feet close in. And we're doing it from paper to reality. I get these across my desk because a bank gives them to me to get a feasibility study done, to get my opinion on whether I should fund it. I started seeing crazy things come across my desk, crazier than anything I've seen in 28 years. Spring of last year. Square footages we've never seen. Square footages presented in ways we've never seen. And I'll show you some examples of that. Stack Flat going in Birmingham. This is the biggest developer in Birmingham. Very traditional developer, did the Ross Bridge Golf Club, PGA Tour. But they've seen the writing on the wall. They're going down to Birmingham and doing Stack Flats, which is stick built, so it's less expensive. But look at what they're doing. They're mirroring what the apartment is doing. 562 square feet. They're going to sell it for $220, which is kind of a first-time buyer price. I like that. It's going to work. Now, they're having to self-fund it because banks still think condo's a bad word, and for good reason. But they're also doing revitalization. This is the extreme that I've seen anywhere. This is in UAB, downtown. going into revitalization of older buildings. This is the room. I'm not kidding you. There's a little Murphy bed behind this hard hat person, and it's 235 square feet. 80 grand. Can't sell them fast enough. That's a hotel room. But it's in a cool location. 340 bucks a square foot. It's a different world. All right, let's do Nashville. Nashville's doing a lot of stack flats. They're very successful. Let me show you some Atlanta, I'll be done. This is down the street from Ponce City. Ponce City is the closest we get to downtown Greenville, and it ain't as good. So, but it is, you can valet your bike and valet your dog, like you can in downtown Greenville. Rooftop bars. I had never seen this before. This is stack flat proposed across the street from this deal, 400 square feet. I called the guy and said, are you missing a zero there? We've never built anything on purpose at 400 square feet. And he was going to sell it for 180. That's a 750 mortgage. I said, what makes you think that's going to work? He said, have you seen what they're paying for rent across the street at Ponce City? And yes, 560 is $1,600 a month. 750 beats 1,600, right? Isn't this how we got first-time buyers out of apartments in the old days? We said it's cheaper to own than it is to rent. Just going to do it in different ways. This deal will work. It beats the rent at every level, and I think it's a great use of space. This one blew my mind. This is in Reynoldstown, an up-and-coming area, redevelopment as well, but this is a traditional townhome, 3 stories with a rooftop terrace. By the way, rooftop terraces are a big thing. You know that here, don't you? Then I got this plan. Look at that elevation. It's not much wider than the window. It prompted a phone call. What are you doing? He said, you know, we had a zoning requirement left over from the previous deal in '06 of a certain percentage that had to be workforce. You've seen that. So 16 of his 62 units had to meet this requirement and formula. They couldn't find a plan in this country to fit it. They went to Australia to find this. It's a townhome that is 11 feet wide. We've never built anything 11 feet wide in Atlanta on purpose either. 3 stories with the rooftop terrace, 1,500 square feet. It's going to be in low 2s. Did they sell them? Oh God, sold them out. But this is how early we are in the process. This had to come across my desk in spring of last year. I said, okay. They funded it. They developed it. They built it. This is 3 weeks ago. We're early in this process. That's the 11-foot wide unit. I had to borrow a tape measure just to confirm. It feels bigger though, the height of it and the rooftop terrace. They're going to build these on purpose because they work so well. I love it. If they can get the zoning. This is the first, I hate the tiny home movement. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you that. I can't stand it. I've never liked it. I don't like the TV show. You put wheels on a tiny home, I'm going to throw up. I can't ignore this anymore though. I don't know how deep it is, but this is one of my customers, Jim Chapman. The city of East Point worked with him, had 7 acres right in downtown, it's near the airport. They designed the first dedicated tiny home neighborhood that I know of in the Southeast. And it's 40 homes on 7 acres, tiny homes, 500 square feet to 1,000 square feet. Every tiny home is going to have a plot and a communal garden. Had no idea what a big deal that was. People went berserk over that. What's he going to sell these for? It's walkable to downtown. He's going to sell them for the high ones. That's a first-time buyer price. 500 square feet. You see a theme here? And so how did this go over? Well, this is the news announcement. The zoning was approved. They had to rewrite the zoning. There was no zoning for this. They had to go to the drawing board. People are going crazy over this. He's got a waiting list of 650 people for 40 homes. And if you read these people are, how do you get excited over 600 square feet? They are. And it's moved down buyers and late millennials. And I love it. Now you could take that same 180 grand, go 40 miles west in Atlanta and buy a 2,000 square foot house. Is a millennial going to do that? No. They might do that. This is the other one, and I'm almost done, I promise. I had never heard this term until about 3 weeks ago. Somebody took me to lunch. Granny flat. You heard that term? I thought I knew everything. This is called accessory dwelling unit zoning. And it turns out a lot of cities are talking about it now. No clue. You know, this is from You know, the days when we actually took care of our parents, you know, we put them in the house in the back. This is a zoning where the main building, you have the accessory building behind it. Well, then we started putting our parents in nursing homes, and that zoning kind of went away. It's coming back. I think it needs to. Atlanta is the first city in the Southeast that I'm aware of who has approved this. It's already being done in infill locations in Atlanta, spotty here and there. But the City of Atlanta Housing Development Authority cleared some older infrastructure in Grant Park, and their plan is to do 226 units as a planned subdivision or a planned community with some retail, with some apartments. And here's how it's going to look. They're 50 by 150 foot lots. Not big. They're going to have a duplex. They did away with the minimum setbacks. They're going to have a duplex on the front of the lot, 1,500 square feet apiece. 2 tiny homes behind the duplexes, no more than 750 square feet. And there's going to be a whole subdivision in that. Street access on both sides. What's the price going to be? Grant Park. Very cool area of town. Duplexes, high twos. Tiny homes, 130,000 to 150,000. I think it'll work. By the way, I'm not the only one who is striving to pay attention to tiny homes. Berkshire Hathaway, one of the best companies in the country, in the world actually, has big plans for tiny homes as well. Again, I don't know how deep that market is. We're going to find out. I don't think we can ignore it anymore. The demographic shifts in this country after the Great Recession have made it possible for us to do this. We could not have done this 15 years ago. It was a different country. It is not. I think it's maybe time to start looking at that. That's my presentation, and I appreciate it. I think that was my last slide. Yes, sir. Thank you.